About the Appalachian Plateau. There's some very important words that we're going to have to learn to kind of better understand some things. But don't worry, we're going to go over that. So at this point, you've already read your first weekly for week 7, in which we start introducing the 5 different regions of Georgia. And today we're going to go over the first one, the Appalachian Plateau. Now, before we get into this a little bit more, we're going to go over some important words that we need to understand. One of those is mountains. Now, you know that Miss Francis from the mountains, I talk about all the time. A mountain is an area of land that is much higher than the land around it. A mountain is much taller than a hill. If you've been to somewhere like Gatlinburg, Dollywood, Dahlonega, any places like that, even Tennessee, that is a mountain, and you've probably been to a mountain at some point in your life. Now, a plateau, which is a very important part of the Appalachian Plateau region, is also a mountain. But if you'll notice over here to the left, it looks like the top part has been chopped off. It looks like maybe a triangle is missing from the mountain, and that is what makes a plateau instead of a mountain. It has that top part that is missing, so therefore it's flat. Now, if you look at the canyon here, a canyon is a valley, and it's got steep, rocky sides. One of the most famous canyons is the Grand Canyon, and that is in Arizona, which is a good ways away from Georgia. But a canyon can have a river or a stream running through it. And so in this picture, it's got that running through, so you see how the stone, rocky sides, they're up on the side, and then you've got that river flowing through it. The next one is ridges and valleys. And that's actually a type of region that we'll talk about more. But a ridge is the area that's at the top of a mountain. So a ridge is the top of the mountain. And a valley is what is actually between the mountain or a hill at the bottom. And if you'll see the picture, it's pointing to the ridge, which is at the top, and the valley, which is at the bottom. Now, the Appalachian Plateau is the area that we're going to talk about. It's right there where that small red area is on the left. It is the smallest region of Georgia. So of the 5 regions, the Appalachian Plateau is the smallest. Now, this is where you get a little bit better idea of what a plateau is. We're going to talk a little bit more about the land that's part of the Appalachian Plateau. If you look here, you see where it says plateau there on that picture and it is pointing? Do you see how that looks flat? That is flat. Now, if you look on the right-hand side, you see that mountain right there? It's kind of round. That's not so flat, is it? So that's what makes a plateau a plateau. And in this region, there are plateaus, and that means that there are also some mountains, like what we see on the left. Some of the mountains have flat tops, though, instead of peaks, which is called a plateau. And the region also has narrow valleys and wooded ridges, which, if you look down, in the middle of the picture, right under the word plateau, that is a valley, guys. That is a valley. You see how it is in between the mountain on the left and the plateau on the right? That is what a valley is. A ridge would be also at the tip top. So if you're looking on the left-hand side, that is a good example of a ridge. As far as the weather goes in the Appalachian Plateau, because it is in the mountains, it can get cool at times, especially in the fall or winter. So it gets a little bit cooler than y'all are used to here in Cobb County. But as far as the weather, it doesn't get very warm. It's usually kind of cool. Now, if we look at the animals that are in the Appalachian Plateau, y'all probably are not very familiar with some of these. The bobcat, where I grew up in the mountains, there was bobcats, and there was also black bears. But you'll see here the white-tailed deer. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I live in Ackworth, which is also in Cobb County. I see a lot of those in my backyard. So it's very possible that you have seen some of those up close, or maybe even driving. Now, crops, if you remember, we talked a little bit about different food and science, and one of the things that we did an experiment on was corn. Do y'all remember that? Well, this area is not famous for crops grown. And The reason is because of just how the area is. There's just too much rock. So there's not a lot of, soil that is very rich in nutrients, which, as we learned, is very important for plants to grow. However, they do grow some corn. So they grow some of the corn and soybean. You might not be super familiar with soybean, but I'll tell you guys a secret. It's in a lot of things. If you go to McDonald's, Burger King, a lot of the fast food places, a lot of times the things that you eat have soybean in them. Lookout Mountain is found in this region. Now, I have been to Lookout Mountain, and I'm going to tell you guys, it is pretty awesome. It's very, very large, and when you look on the mountain, you can actually see where it divides into 3 different states. So it actually goes from Alabama, which is to the left-hand side of Georgia. Do y'all remember when we looked at the map last week when I had the map taped on the wall and I showed you this is where Alabama is? And then it goes into Tennessee, which is above Georgia. I also showed you all that on the map. And so you've got Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee that Lookout Mountain goes into. And this is actually the tallest mountain area in Georgia. So when you stand up there, it's called Lookout Mountain because you literally can see everything below it. It's kind of like a tall tree house, and you can see everything below it. It's just really cool, which is probably why they named it Lookout Mountain, because it came really in handy for people to kind of stand up there and see what was going on below them. Another park that is in that area is called the Cloudland Canyon. It is a beautiful, beautiful park. And we might watch a video later where there is a park ranger from Cloudland Canyon kind of talking a little bit about the area. But as you see, it's very, very pretty. Look at all those fall colors. We'll be having that soon. I cannot wait. Now, the land of the Appalachian Plateau, it's mostly used for pastures for animals or for harvesting trees. And so that's probably why the deer live in that area, because they love pastures. They love to come into an open field and eat grass. Cows also love that. They love pastures. Horses, those are probably some farm animals that you would see if you happen to go into that region. Now, as far as some other things that you may or may not know, coal. Coal comes from Appalachian Plateau. So this region is the only known region in Georgia where we actually get coal from. You might have heard the joke where if you're not good, Santa Claus is going to leave you a lump of coal. And it's just a big hard rock. And so that is from the Appalachian Plateau, which, we talked about how there's a lot of rocks there, so they can do a lot of planting. All right, now I want you to practice. I want you to practice for me. I want you to look at this map right here, and I want you to point. Where is the Appalachian Plateau region? Do you remember? Do you remember where it is? I'll give you a hint if you can't remember. It is the smallest region on this map. So maybe you figured it out. All right, so here is the Appalachian Plateau region. You see how it's circled? It is the smallest. You see how it's smaller compared to all the other regions? So that's kind of a hint. In this picture, it's red. So maybe this might help you remember it if you think of red Appalachian Plateau region. Just kind of put that picture in your mind to kind of help you remember. All right, guys, I've got an activity for y'all to do where you're going to read a little bit about the Appalachian Plateau region, and you're going to fill out a worksheet that goes along with some of the things that we talked about here. So if y'all got any questions, y'all can just have Mom or Dad send me an email, or we can talk about it when you get back to class. I hope y'all have a great break. I'll talk to you later. Bye.